happy. Welcome to the Colorful Homeschooler podcast, where we parlay on productivity, personality, passions, education, and theory. I'm a lover of Jesus, a wife of 20 years, and a homeschool mama of 4 special needs boys who keep me constantly active. I'm so glad you're here to join me. Pull up a chair. There's space for you at this table. Good morning, all. So by the time I release this episode, we will have graduated my son. We will have had him walk the aisle in our backyard. I'm giving a speech. My husband is going to pray over him. We are going to have scriptures over him and life-giving words. And I will have all sorts of emotions. So by the time you hear this, that will have just happened. Wow, I can't even believe it. I can't believe 10 years have gone by so quickly. In a couple of weeks, I'll be coming out with a podcast about the realities of homeschooling, just about some of the lies that I heard over the years and how reality actually played out. Some positives, tons of encouraging information, and also just truth. So hopefully you'll follow the show and tune in for that. Also, of course, follow me on Instagram, Colorful Homeschooler. I'm sharing a lot of clean skincare right now, and also some of the ways that I'm planning to get ready for the homeschool year. I'm also reviewing some different teacher planners, some different products for school for your kids, and hopefully that will also be encouraging and helpful. So come follow me on Instagram. Today's episode, we're continuing our planning series, and today we're going to talk about electives and planning out your weekly time block. Now, last week I went into how to select your core curriculum, and I walked you through a bunch of different questions in order to do so. With your electives, there are going to be some similar questions, but a little bit of a different process that I do to choose my electives, which electives I'm actually using, as well as how I pick the specifics of those electives. So here's a listing of electives that I just got off Google. Health, physical education, art, and within that, I will describe art with artist study, picture study, art periods, art history, handicrafts, and projects, methods, or theory. So that's all under the heading of art. Now, music, another heading that broke off into several different subtopics. For example, composer study, musical theory, lessons, composition. All of those would fall under music. Then there's career-focused electives, such as technology, medical, childcare, business, and these would be tailored to the child's desires for their future, something they might want to try out. Then there's interest-led electives, such as architecture or building design, fashion, sewing, dinosaurs, things like that. Some of those, of course, can fall under science, but these would be electives that you take that focus on your child's interest. Then there's foreign language. And then finally, there's creative writing and poetry. And these, to me, also fall under English language arts. But if you think of creative writing as an elective or poetry as an elective, it may change the way you think of them time-wise. So sometimes verbiage matters. And under poetry, there can be several different ways of using this term. So you can do a poet study. You can just read poetry. You can work on rhyme scheme. You can go deep into different types of poetic construction. So there are all different ways to handle poetry as well. So the first question you would ask yourself after hearing this list is, which do you want to fit in? Now, I asked a lot of great questions in our end of year reflection episode 27, and I'll link that in the show notes. And I think it's important to listen to that before you do either episode 31 or 32 with me. You want to really know where you're coming from so that you can look ahead to where you're going. Back to the matter at hand, which electives do you want to fit in? And which ones have you done in the past? How did they work? How didn't they? You will already have reflected on this from episode 27. Now, with each of the ones that you decide to fit in, the next question would be how? How are you going to fit them in? Are you going to use a curriculum already created, or are you going to design a curriculum? Now, when you hear design a curriculum, you may run screaming in the other direction. Too much work. But this can be as simple as just reading poetry every day. So the designing of that curriculum would be choosing an anthology that speaks to you, or picking out a poet that you really like and finding a suitable biography online, or perhaps through one of the sites that I'll mention in the show notes that offer different biographies of artists and painters and poets. There's also the whole Poets for Young Readers series. You can find some of them in your library. Many of them are available online used. That could be as simple as designing the curriculum. Or do you want to purchase a curriculum? Online, a digital curriculum, or a hard copy curriculum? That would be the first thing to decide. Now, if you're going to purchase a curriculum, we're going to return to our questions from last week. First, Google, say, again, your philosophy. So Charlotte Mason poetry study. And then read through a couple of the Google descriptions, not clicking into them yet, and choose 3 to 5 that you want to click into. Then you're going to read the introduction, go through the website, see their scope and sequence, check out what they expect of you. You might go to Kathy Duffy and see if she reviews them, or another podcast or blogger that you enjoy that might review that specific curriculum. You know you've trusted their advice before, and now you want to take it and use it for this specific elective. You should definitely compare it with your philosophy. How is it going to be to teach this? If you are a Charlotte Mason homeschooler and this art study comes from a very open and go textbook curriculum, that might not jive with you. So you want to make sure to check it with your philosophy and see if it will be enjoyable to teach. Also, compare it with the way you schedule. If you do a lot of group lessons and this has very independent work, then you want to make sure that it's going to be something that's going to fit into the way that you schedule. Is it open and go for you? Can you just use it and move on? Or do you have to put a lot of work into it? Does that fit with the way that you like to homeschool? So ask yourself these questions as you're trying to decide if you choose to have a curriculum, as you're trying to decide what that curriculum may be. Finally, read a portion of it. Do you like it? Look at the art. Do you like the paintings they're using, the landscapes, the sculptures? Do they pull in history? Do they show some furniture, some fashion from the era, different pieces of art that are perhaps outside the scope of painting? Really think about, are you drawn to this particular curriculum? And if not, then you probably won't teach with as much passion, and therefore your kids might not be that into it. And also, do you have a comfort level with the way it's structured? Now, that's not a make or break. You can build that comfort level. All of us have to build comfort level with different curriculums at some point. But do you have a comfort level? And if not, are you willing to put in the time to get comfortable with it? Those are some valid questions. Now, if you're going to design the curriculum, this is the time where you begin your research. So if you decide that you want to design your artist study for the year, and you finally narrow it down and you're going to do Albrecht Dürer and Eugene Delacroix, that's what we did last year. So you want to start diving into their works. You want to find a notable biography that you can read throughout the term or semester, whatever it is that however you structure your year. And I went over all those in our yearly scheduling options. So make sure to choose your artists and then break up as much art as you want to use. Now, I schedule my year in trimesters. So I have 13 weeks in each of my terms. However, I only do 2 painters a year or 2 artists because that's what fits for my family. That gives us time to really dive into the artists, to really get to know their work, to look at it and breathe it in and use it with the music of the time period, to hang it up around the house and get used to it before we're switching to a new artist. So you're not stuck to any one way of scheduling a curriculum that you design or even one that you purchase. Curriculums are just good guidelines. You don't have to follow it to the letter. I don't think I have followed a curriculum to the letter since maybe ever. So make a curriculum your own if you're designing it or if you're purchasing it. I also suggest the Charlotte Mason notebooking episodes that I did. Even if you're not a Charlotte Mason homeschooler, there were a lot of different additions that you can do to different subjects to kind of make them more real for your child. So I'll link those as well in the show notes. I have one on social studies notebooking, English language arts notebooking, and then a miscellaneous notebooking, which includes some science and math notebooks, as well as some word notebooks and different things that she had suggested. Even if you're not Charlotte Mason, there is a wealth of information there that might really excite your children or yourself for the upcoming year to kind of add a little booster to what you're doing. So hopefully through either designing a curriculum or purchasing a curriculum, you're now all set for your electives. For the upcoming year, we've always done our artist study, and I definitely don't want to let that go. But one thing that kind of slipped this past year for us that I realized in my reflection episode was our music. We didn't do a composer study this year. Our lessons fell through because our teacher, through various reasons, is not teaching us anymore. So my kids were just practicing on their own without any guidance, really. And then on top of that, we used to do singing warm-ups the year before last. And then this last year, we didn't do our singing warm-ups as part of morning time. So they just didn't happen. For me, I'm really focusing on making sure that music is more scheduled and supported in my homeschool this upcoming year because it's a priority to me. It just slipped last year. So there's some real talk. It happens to everybody. So what electives do you want to do, and how can you schedule them in and give them a priority placement? Electives are what brings so much beauty into the homeschool week, so don't overlook these and do plan them. Okay, so now we're going to go into a little bit of how I plan each day within the week. Now, if you return to the weekly scheduling options episode that I did, I defined all the different ways that you can schedule your homeschool week. I tend to be a block scheduler. So I have a specific amount of time that I like to spend on certain lessons. Because I'm a Charlotte Mason follower, I do shorter lessons. So I have a specific amount of time I like to spend on them and a specific amount of days in the week that I like to do them. I do loop a couple of subjects, but not consistently. So I'm going to go into how I plan my block scheduling. I print out subject blocks of time. So I do this on graph paper. I may just write it out and cut it, but I like to have the amount of time equal to the size of the block. So if I decide each graph paper block is 10 minutes, then 40 minutes would be 4 graph paper blocks down. The x-axis doesn't matter at this point because whatever. It's just as long, maybe I choose 6 so that it fits the writing of each subject within it. So I cut out blocks of time and label them with the subject. That's my first step. If I want to do it 5 times a week, I will cut out 5 30-minute blocks so that I have them all stacked and I know that I need to fit those in. Now, I'm very visual, so this is a very helpful way for me. This is how I do it. So I also write on there with a symbol, is it independent work or do my children need me in that subject? Now, one of my children is dyslexic and dysgraphic, as well as on the Genius IQ score. So that's fun. So he does still need me for quite a lot. So I need to mark down so that I'm not expected to be in 2 places at once. Of course, none of us can do that. So that's important to write down on these cutout blocks of time for me. Now I spend time on each child. So I usually have blocks of time for each child. I cut them out for each child unless they're in similar years. and then their time frame will be the same. So if there's any differences in their time frame, I will cut out separate blocks for the other child. So I sit there and I look, okay, and I have to schedule out which needs me, which doesn't, so that one child's doing independent work while I'm working with the other child. And then I need to fit the times together so that of course, our group lessons are all done together. And then the independent lessons are one off, one on, meaning I'm with one child, I'm not with the other. And that's how I work it out, by cutting out these blocks of graph paper. That's worked for me for the last 7 years, and I really stand by it. So, for example, if I wanted to do Plutarch, which is ancient history studies, if you don't read Plutarch, he wrote lives of different people in ancient history. And you just read the life and you maybe narrate, you maybe follow some questions, however it works for you. If I want to do Plutarch 1 time a week for 30 minutes, that includes the narration. And this needs me. So I would I would go 3 blocks down, so that's 30 minutes. I would write Plutarch on it, and I would put my symbol on that shows that it needs me. And I would put that on my stack. Next, math 5 times a week for 30 minutes, and that's independent. I don't really work on math with my children. I have a video series that I've been using for all of my 10 years, and I really like it for my boys. So there you go. That does not need me. That's independent, and that's 5 times a week. So I would cut out 5 3-block sections for math. And then perhaps science 2 times a week, 30 to 40 minutes. So I'll cut out a 40-minute section that includes the lab and the narration. And this can vary. Some days it needs me, some days it doesn't. So I would put the symbol for independent / the symbol for me, so that I'm not scheduling myself to be doing something else during that time. And then perhaps history 4 times a week for 30 minutes. I would cut out 4 30-minute blocks. And now I sit down and I work it out, and I move the little pieces around. When I have all of my blocks cut out, I move them all around so that I can build my schedule for the year. So hopefully that idea is helpful. That is how I have done it, and it definitely works for us. Then once it's all laid out, I pencil it onto a decorative graph paper piece. So I might draw something around the edges or put some colored paper on or some washi tape. I make it beautiful and interesting. And I write it out by time at the beginning of the year. But eventually the times mean nothing, and it more just has to do with how much time we're spending on each lesson. I hang them up for both boys so that they each can see their own schedule, and they return to this over and over and over again in the beginning of the year. And then by the end of the year, they don't really go to it as much, but it's still hanging. This helps them to see, and I mentioned this in my other episode, that I'm not just randomly assigning work. Number 1, we have a set schedule. We have a timetable, so the child knows what's coming. And it also helps keep us responsible. So it helps me to stay on track, especially in the beginning when it feels overwhelming to get back into school. Yeah, that's right. For me too. It feels totally overwhelming to get back into school after summer break. So working through each subject and having a timeline is really helpful. For certain subjects like history, I have books that I want to read through the semester with my children. I have our Together books, and then they have their independent books. So as I'm looking at my Together books for history, the ones we read as a family, I'm going to figure out how many do I want to read per trimester. If I want to read one larger historical novel to support our learning through the semester, then I break it out. So my terms are 13 weeks. So I would break that book out to 11 weeks. I would not break it up into 13-week segments. I want to leave a week for life and a week for exams. So again, I would break that book into 10 or 11 weeks, giving myself space and room. I went over this both in my productivity for the Homeschool Mama, my first episode ever, and in some of my planning episodes. Don't schedule to the margins. Do not schedule your entire day, your entire time. Always have some wiggle room because life happens. And you don't want to feel overwhelmed when the plan isn't working properly and then just throw it to the wall and say, okay, chaos is our plan now. A sweet mama said that in one of the classes I was just in. So I loved that phrase. It's like, okay, this isn't working, the nicely scheduled day. So now my schedule is chaos and that's how I'm going to plan. Because sometimes we can't control things, and not scheduling to the margins really helps with that. So that's a big suggestion I leave for you, especially in scheduling out the books, in scheduling your science time, history, etc. You want to make sure to leave some wiggle room in there. So if you fall behind on one day, there's wiggle room the next day. Another thing I'll say that I say to myself constantly when I tell myself, oh, I'm behind. Ladies and gents, we are homeschoolers. Behind who, right? Give yourself grace. And I'm just preaching to the choir here because I am just as bad. But behind who, right? You are where you're supposed to be. Just keep plugging away, keep loving what you're doing, keep instilling the love of learning in your children. Hopefully this episode was helpful, planning your electives and then how I plan my weekly scheduling blocks. Please follow me on Instagram and follow the show. I humbly ask you, if you enjoyed it, please leave it 5 stars and a written review on whatever podcast platform you listen to. The written review makes a huge difference, and it gets the algorithm out there so that more people can find me and hopefully be encouraged by me. So it means a lot. Thank you so much for being my listeners and for coming back every week. Remember, I truly believe in you.